Alright, so now that we have our HMI done, we want to go into our PLC program. So how do we go about doing this, right? So normally you start a project, you have a scope of work, if you would, right? So you have a scope of work of how you would lay out your program, how you would program things, how you would do your HMI. Now, as we're going through our programming and as we're going through the teaching of this project, right, because we're treating this like a project, true in form, what we want to do is actually understand our process. So this is the reason why I wanted to start with the HMI and give a base layout of what we're doing so that you can get a understanding of how things should be structured. Now what I did is to save us a little bit of time is I've made a simple little notepad, right? Made a simple little notepad right here to give us a base understanding. So this would give our PLC logic starting. This would give the task level. So I'll save this real quick. This would give the task level. So this would be the start of the program. This would be the program level, so we're going to have the mixing controls, okay? So then that's the program level. Then we're going to have premix. The premix area, if you can think about it, would be this highlighted area up here. That's the premix area, right? And I just kind of highlighted it, but then the mixing area would be the area right here, right? Then the finished product tank would be the finished product area right here. Right, so right in this area, and then we're going to have our mixing motor controls and then our flow meters. So then that would in case one, that would be all the routines. So each one of these would be a routine level, right? So think about that as a routine level, and then we'll come in and do that. So we're just basically giving the program level and the routine level. So when you have a program level, you have a task level, and then you have a program level, and then you have a routine level. So there's 3 different levels. So when we come over here, I want to kind of give a base indicator of what these are so that you understand these are routines and this is going to be a program. Now the reason I'm doing this is for a simple illustration, right? So this is the task level. We're going to have 1 task in our program. We're going to have 3 programs. 1 program for our mixing controls, all of our controls for our mixing and everything that has to do with that. Then we're going to have 1 for the recipe control, and then 1 for the actual alarm and events type situation. So alarming the whole program of that nature. So I'm trying to give you a base understanding of the key components to a natural project would be these fundamental things, right? So the goal here is to have your whole project be user-friendly for the operator, but you want to have it user-friendly for the actual person that's coming behind you, like a maintenance technician or a process engineer, because there are some very talented and process engineers that are out there that will look at their ladder logic to see how things work. They'll look at even the function blocks and stuff of that nature in structured text to see how that works, so if you are using those things. So again, and the engineers, electrical engineers that work on this. So the people that work behind you, you want to make sure this is structured well so it's easy for them to understand. And the point of what we're doing, we're going to structure it in the levels of the basic flow of operation. We'll have the mixing area, which is, or we'll have the pre-mixing area, we'll have the mixing area, we'll have the finished product, and then we're going to do the motors as far as the motor controls. And then we're going to do the flow meters as well. So we'll make that capitalized. We'll save that one real quick too. So and what I want to do too is actually let you know that we do have 1 PowerFlex drive in our program. So think about this. We have 1 PowerFlex drive in our program, and I'm going to use the PowerFlex drive for the actual that's going to be for the mixing motor of the actual mixing tank. That's going to be this right here. Now these pumps I'm going to simulate with a virtual axis, a servo axis, so that we get full fundamental workings of those and we understand how the controls work and we understand how things work of that nature, but you will get a base understanding roughly about how servos work as well. So I want to give you that understanding as well, as kind of give you that. And we only have the components that we have. So on this trainer that we currently have, we don't actually have 4 different motors. So I'm not going to actually run and simulate 4 different things. I'm going to have, okay, this is axis 1, 2, and 3, right? And oftentimes you can and you will run pumps off of servos. So generally speaking, you won't run a mixer off a servo. You would run a mixer off of a PowerFlex drive. Now, there are a lot of instances where all of these would be PowerFlex drives. But in our instance, what we're doing is, I just want to give you that instance, that we will be converting our pumps into virtual axes. Okay? So with all that said, let's go ahead and implement this stuff, right? So just like we talked about, we're going to do our program levels. So first and foremost, we have our task level, which is the task level, that's the main task at 47 milliseconds. That's the task level. So we have that there. We have the main, we have the mixing control up here. We have that program. And then we're going to add our recipe program. Okay, so we're going to come in and add new program. And then we're just going to paste that name in there. And then we're going to hit OK. And we're going to come in and add our alarm program. Copy. And this is the reason why I wanted to lay out like I did and give a good indicator of understanding, as far as basically using it off of a simple little notepad. Generally speaking, when you're doing a project, you would have a scope of work, you'd have spreadsheets, you would have Excel spreadsheets, you would have Word documents, you would have drawings and stuff of that nature behind it to show you different devices, how they're wired, how things are done, what is the scope of work, as far as like what is the the process, and how is the process supposed to work, right? The process of operation, how is it supposed to work? In the instance of what we're doing in this training, I basically am, indicating that I already know how a process works, so I'm basically giving you the process and how it works. So that's kind of where it goes, right? So I just want to give you the understanding of how, when you're doing a project, you're going to see a lot of different stuff, but these are the base fundamentals of kind of how you should go about it, right? Whether you start with your HMI first, or whether you start with a set of prints first, doesn't matter, as long as you understand how to make a scope of work. So what we're doing here is we're going to come into our main program, and we're going to add the routine. Now, being that I want my mixer, my pre-mix tanks at the very first, I'm going to do hold shift, and I'm going to do underscore 1, and I'm going to put a 1 right there because I want to have that as my very first thing, right? Now, when you do that, it's going to come up and have each one of these, and when you create them, it's going to come up with a default rung. You just go ahead and delete that default rung because we're not going to use it. And we're going to go ahead and make our second one, which is going to be the mixing tanks. And we're going to go ahead and add a new routine. And I want you to note too, when you're making these routines, you can change the type from ladder to sequential function chart to function block to actual structured text. Now you can do all those. We're going to keep this as simple as possible. We're going to do all this in ladder logic because we may do some simulation inside of function block, but we're going to get that'll be later in the actual training. I want to actually get the base fundamentals down first and get you a solid implementation so that the questions can be answered amongst the training instead of having a lot of questions during the training, as far as like, oh, by the way, we're doing this, and I want to actually implement the program and then simulate it afterwards. So basically what I'm getting at. So we'll come in here, add another one, another routine. This would be our finished product, so this is going to be 3. And you see the reason I'm doing this is now they put them in sequential order, 1, 2, 3. If I didn't do that, they would go by alphabetical order. Okay, so if I just come in here and put these in here, then if I looked at it, it would not be in the sequential order I want them in. And I want them in a sequential order so that the person reading the logic can come in and determine where they need to be, right? Really, really, really simple. So come in here, paste the name in here, and it's kind of why I like to lay out the names first too, so that I know what to do. And again, delete your rungs, delete all the rungs, and as you're deleting all the rungs, what you want to do is come up here and just cancel all these, because all this is going to be like empty right now. So what we're going to do is add our flow meter in here now. So this will be our 5th one. So we're going to come in here and get all our base project done first. So we're just laying the foundation, right? So we're laying our foundation before we do the controls. And this is going to open that up, delete that. And then so now if you look at it, we have our mixer, we have our recipe, we have our alarms. Now we need to come in our recipe and add the recipe routine. So first, I like to come in here in each one of these routines. I like to come in and do a main routine. So, and the reason I like to do that is just because this gives a nice structure to this, and you'll see this in just a second. So the main routine will come in and default, most of the time it will default to actually come in here and give a main routine. But sometimes you have to come in here and call the main routine. So in the instance of this right here, that's what I'm showing you on the program level. How they attach the actual routines is based upon, so you have your task level, you have your routine level, or you have your task level, you have your program level, and then you have your routine level. Now the main routine is where you're going to do your JSRs that are attached to each one of these. So this will attach all your subroutines as far as that goes. So that was the reason by having the main routine. So this right here would be, and then we'll just leave that just like that. So we have a base indicator of that is the first thing, and then come over here. Now in the same instance here of the alarms, we'll have a main routine. We'll have a main routine. Put that in here, and if you name it main routine, it will come in as a default. So it will come in as a default right here. Again, in configuration and your program configuration, you can change your main routine if you want to, and you can inhibit it. You can do whatever. If you inhibit it, it will come like that, and it will not show that it's working. We're not going to inhibit it, so we're not going to do that. But you can inhibit a program level if you want to. Now again, to save face and save time, we're going to go ahead and add these. So this would be alarm monitoring. So we'll do alarm monitoring, and we'll add this as a first one. So we have that there. Delete that. Come in here. And again, we're just giving our base foundation. So for those that have a fundamental understanding of how things are done, this may be repetitive to you, but every time you see something and you see it in a different perspective, then things are done differently, right? So programming can be done a million different ways, right? So as long as the same, I think we've talked about this before, the same objective is to get the task done a certain way, right? So it doesn't matter, really, it does matter, but I mean, as far as it goes on how you do things, it's really up to the interpretation of the programmer, right? As long as the task that is at hand, that's why you write a scope of work. The scope of work will dedicate that time and effort to get that task done, right? That task that you're doing. So in that effort, it doesn't, as long as you go by the scope of work, the logic and stuff and the way you program it could be done a million different ways. So that's kind of why we're going and laying out our project this way. So if you think about the way we just did everything, we have our mixing level, right? Our mixing control. So if anybody comes behind us, they say, oh, well, I'm having trouble with my mixer controls and I want to figure out why. They can go to one of these programs right here and figure out why. And they can go to premix if they're having trouble with premix. If they're having trouble with the mixing tank or the mixing section, they come over here to the mixing routine. If they're having trouble with finished product, they can go to finished product. If they're having trouble with one of the mixing control or motors and stuff of that nature, they can go right there. If they're having trouble with one of the flow meters, they can go right there. And if they're having a set alarm or recipe issue, they can go to the recipe. And if they want to actually go into figure out which alarm is active or figure out alarming and alarms and events and how that works, they can come over here to the alarming. So this is the task level. This is the main programs, right? The three main programs that we have currently. And these are the levels that we have. Now, in the sake of what we're doing, we need to have our JSRs in here. So what we'll do is in the main program of all these, we're going to go ahead and add our JSRs. So we'll go ahead, and what I like to do too is I like to double click and just type in JSR, and that gives you that, just that simple. And then being that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'll just copy this, and you can Control C, Control V. Just keep hitting Control V, and we have 5 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Right. So now we'll go into our JSRs, and we'll call each one of these in the exact sequence that they are laid out. Now you don't have to, because you're calling them all in one. You know, it doesn't matter. You can call them. You could call these all in one single rung if you wanted to. But all we're doing here is linking. We're linking the main routine to all the subroutines to the main routine, and the main routine is linked to the program level. The program level is linked to the task. So this gives the foundational layout. If you can think about this, you have your program, or you have your task is giving conductivity or linking to your program level to your main routine, right? Main routine. Then the main routine links to your routines. Now that's the way of the flow of operation. So if you go one, so this would be the very first thing that happens. This would be the second thing. This would be the third, and this would be the fourth. So this gives conductivity. So each one of these is the layer. This is like the admin layer, the task that would be. This is the program level. Generally speaking, that is the programs of how you want to lay your programs out. And this is the routine level, main routine. Now, as we're getting into this, the main routine will then do the JSRs to link to the actual routines. So again, you need to JSR this, right? So we'll say JSR. The rest of these will automatically link to these, based upon just the way they're set up. So I kind of just wanted to just lay that out real quick and show you the order of operation so that you are well aware of that. For those that are not, right? Because this is kind of not so. I mean, I can blow the screen up if you want, but it's all I'm doing is adding a JSR for each one of these. So now we have this one done. We want to do the same thing here, and we're going to type it in JSR, and then we're just going to call that because we have one routine in that program. And then we're going to close these, and then we're going to go to our alarming, and we're going to come into our main routine. We're going to type it in again, JSR. You can go to program level up here on top and get the JSR up here if you wanted to, right here. But I like to type it in, it's just easy. And just hit Control C and Control V, right? So now we have all three of these. Have these in here. Oh, and if you put in the wrong one, you can come back and edit it. No worries. So now we have this there. What we want to do now is come in and hit this verify controller to verify that all of our stuff is here. And what we're aiming to do is have no errors. So what we've done here is we've added our structure. So all of our programs are in here, right? So we have our main task, our programs, each one of our programs. We have our routines that we want to have programmed. So we're going to program each one of these sections. It may not seem like that's a great deal, right? In what we were doing, based upon the simple controls that we did, based, just doing the batching station that we did. It may not seem like there's a lot to this, but when you're building an application, you're building a project, you're building everything together, it does get kind of large, if you would say, if you're doing it right. If you're making it easy to read, then you want to make sure that you're doing things and laying them out properly so that it's easy and fundamental to read. So we will be programming each one of these sections one section at a time, based upon the actual controls, and go through that actual fundamentals, right? So first we're going to get it working, and then we're going to come in and do our recipes, and then we're going to come in and do our alarming. So we're going to go into a sequential order so that you get a good, solid understanding of how to do this. I know this video kind of ran a little bit long, but I want to give a good, solid understanding and base implementation of how to do this and how to work things so that you get a good you get a good start when you go through this though. As we go, you're going to have, hopefully, like the goal of what we're doing here is to give you a scope of work of how to go through base project, right? So we don't actually have prints, we don't have anything like that, but our goal is to make the HMI user friendly and to make the back end of the actual controls, which would be the servo, or not the servos, but the program controls. We want to make the programming just as user-friendly on the back end for those that are having to interpret it, for maintenance technicians, for process engineers, and for electrical technicians or electrical engineers. So we want to make sure it's easy to read for everybody, from the front end and the back end, right? So that's a good, solid implementation. And the better you can do this, the better success rates you will have on doing any project. So as you go, you're going to think of better ways to do this and better ways to come about it. So, and always get feedback from the operations team, from your team even if you've already done a project, you can always make things better, right? So always err on the edge of, constant and continuous improvement. So with that said, we'll continue on to the very next video.